studied abroad when I was a junior in college, and I met this pastor, and he invited me to his house to have dinner and with his family. And afterwards, I'd never had any whiskey, and he served me Johnny Walker Blue, fantastic Scotch, and that sort of began my journey in whiskey. And then I got home from that, and my roommate had started drinking Old Charter, 10-year, and ginger ale. And that our senior year of college, that was our drink of choice. Our gentleman's drink was Old Charter and ginger ale. And that was sort of the beginning for me. And then it became a regular staple in green rooms and post-show hangs, old-fashioned sipping and talking. That's sort of my speed. And then it really got kind of serious about, 10 years ago. I was looking for a gift for my manager, and he had mentioned that he liked bourbon, and I kind of went looking for a special bottle and found a guy told me, "Oh, there's this bottle of Jefferson's 16. I was like, "Yeah, sure, sounds good." Well, I had no idea that it was an incredibly rare bottle of bourbon, and and just kind of like a lot of people in the last decade, just kind of rode the wave and learned a lot about it and read the books and watched the documentaries and became a nerd about bourbon. Professional, amateur lover of bourbon. I guess I'm sort of professional now that I'm in the business, but yeah. So I got involved before the whiskey existed. So I've been a part of the whiskey part from the very beginning. But I heard of Sweeten's Cove. So for people who don't know, Sweeten's Cove is this 9-hole golf course that was a bit of an "if you build it, they will come" story. Our visionary architect Rob Collins found this defunct 9-hole golf course and completely redid it with his own means and his own dream, and it was like "if you build it, they will come." That all it was a shed and an outhouse, and you could pay $30 and play 9 holes all day over and over and over again. And it became this cult thing where people were making a pilgrimage to it, and it got written up in the New York Times and by Golf Magazine, and it got ranked in the top 100 public courses in America. And people started paying attention to it. I had been going down there to play it with friends. Back then you could rent the whole course out for $1,000 a day and bring 50 friends and play all day long. Those days are long gone. But around that same time, some investors got involved, and some people that I knew through music, people like Andy Roddick and Peyton Manning, and we decided to invest in the golf course and buy a piece of that business. And one of the things that we loved was there was this tradition that people would bring a half or 75% drank bottle of whiskey, put it on the shelf in the shed, and then everybody would take a shot before the round starts, because it's sort of became this cultural thing about the golf course. And we decided that was a good sort of culture piece, and maybe we could start a bourbon brand. And so we did that. Launched it in 2020 in the middle of COVID, which was pretty wild. And it was kind of at the top of the bourbon boom where, everything was expensive. And so our first outings were really well received, but pretty expensive. And we've since sort of developed this new, all this new stuff that's coming out. We're really excited about it. With launching a bourbon in COVID, it started out as a big, "oh no, this is a terrible moment to launch a brand. We can't have events. We can't do bartender cocktail tastings." We were very hamstrung. But at the same time, everybody was at home, hanging out with their pod of friends, and bourbon just went bananas, and everybody wanted to try the newest thing and all these new brands, and it became impossible to find anything that was age-stated. And our first release was a 13-year age-stated Tennessee whiskey. And so I think it ended up being something that put wind in our sails. What we saw as an oncoming storm sort of became the thing that gave us, legs, I think. Well, when they asked me, they said, you're kind of rare in that you love golf, you love bourbon, you're a Tennessean, and you love music. I was like, yeah, there's not or that you're in music, bourbon lover, golfer, Tennessean who's a professional musician. There's not a ton of us, so I kind of fit the bill. I was probably the most bourbon and I was probably the most savvy bourbon enthusiast of the original group. Peyton, historically, and he said this in interviews, is a beer guy. He's like, "I love beer," and Andy's a red wine guy, and so it was fun to teach them about bourbon, to explain about how mash bills work and how the age process works and what makes something, single barrel, what makes something, high gravity, just like all the different things that make bourbon what they are. That it was fun to be sort of the educator in that circle of friends. Yeah, I mean, I love to read, and so I had read a couple books. One being Bourbon Empire, and the other was Pappyland. And then my manager was a wonderful guy named Paul Steele. Was one of the producers on the documentary Neat, and Paul was a dusty hunter for many years before that became, so common that it went away because they all got found. Yeah, he was a treasure hunter, and so I learned a lot from him and then other friends in the neighborhood. And yeah, just have always been sort of curious about things that I like, and I like bourbon, so I got curious about the story of bourbon. Well, we made this turn in this the new our new releases. I was very adamant, and the team agreed that we wanted to make our bourbon more approachable. Everything that we'd released previously had been pretty hot, 107, 109. And I think that targets sort of a very specific bourbon drinker, a veteran bourbon drinker, a high end, an exclusive set of people that really want the sort of very, high octane stuff. But like the golf course, we want our bourbon to be accessible, but also really unique. And so we're now back down in the 90. The 5 year is a 93.7 proof. The 6 year is a 95 proof. We want something that people want to drink on the regular and share with their friends who may or may not be bourbon enthusiasts. But it's kind of like Sweeten's Cove. You want the really good golfer to come there and play and have a hard time scoring, but have a great time. You also want the really, amateur, new to golf person to have a great time. And we think of our bourbon kind of in similar ways. We want a bourbon enthusiast to go, this is great bourbon. It's 5 and 6 year age stated, really solid stuff. Good, smooth enough to drink on its own, but powerful enough to put in a cocktail and still have a personality. But then also for the new person to say, hey, this is, if you want an introduction to good Tennessee bourbon, this is a great one, and it's got a great story. And I think that's sort of bourbon is meant to be shared, and that's sort of a big part of our ethos. The 5 year, it's sort of a little, it's warm, it's bold, it's got sort of caramel cedar kind of start, and a smooth kind of long finish. The 6 year is wheated, so it's obviously a little sweeter, a little less potent, but a really complex sort of stays in your mouth, finish. So they're both very distinct, different mash bills, different ages, but both sort of have that same, I would say, balanced and smooth for both of them would be sort of our commonality between the two. And we're planning a lot of other sort of special, releases as the years progress. I like the 5 year. Yeah, I think it's just a classic daily drinker. Works great on its own. It works great in a cocktail. It's light enough that it's not just a January bourbon. It's an all year bourbon. I'm involved as an owner and as a board member, and I am very active with. We're all very active on sort of design, marketing stuff, but also I've been a part of the bottling and tasting process. I participated with our blenders and went down to their spot 5 or 6 times to sort of really make sure that we were picking the right thing. And we had a lot of conversations about do we go Tennessee only, which I think was a strong opinion that we should. We're a Tennessee golf course. It's a Tennessee company. We're proudly Tennessee, and we had sort of we'd done this Tennessee blend thing, which was cool, but it just felt it felt a little bit sort of out of left field. And I think with the new releases, we're kind of getting back into what we're good at. I think at the end of the day, the thing I like most about being in the bourbon business is the people that you meet, the people that I'm in business with, the distillers, the barrelers, all the folks in the process that we've met along the way, and all the people that like the bourbon, like Sweeten's Cove, the golf course. Every day, 50 to 60 golfers show up and play and have this experience where they meet new friends, they try a new experience together. And bourbon's a lot like that. I've never had a gathering of people, sipping bourbon where I didn't meet somebody new and hear an interesting story and walk away with a different perspective on life through engaging with somebody else. And I think that that's sort of the magic of bourbon, is that it's meant to be shared like the golf course is. And I like that. And my role is sort of just to be in the mix, and share the story. And like I said, I've been a part of it from the beginning, and really proud of what we're doing. I think obviously everybody in bourbon knows that it's become a tricky time, so we can be honest about that. But I think with what we've accomplished with, really making these products accessible while also maintaining this very high level of quality, I'm really proud of that and excited to see sort of how it's received. There are definitely some hidden bottles if you know where to look. Yeah, there's a couple buried mailboxes, and then we also kind of encourage, I mean, within reason, our regulars who are there a lot. They all have some hidden stashes around that are secret, so you never know what you might come across on the golf course. I think a lot of celebrities who get involved in the liquor business think that it's just as easy as slap your name on something, go out there, talk about it, and boom, you've got this business that you can sell and make a bunch of money on. Whereas this from the start was really about making something quality and having a great time with a bunch of friends doing it. And I think we've learned that if you really want to make something quality, just like the golf course, you can't cut corners. And especially in bourbon, you've got to do the hard work and you've got to let time pass. You got to be patient. And, I keep making golf metaphors, but that's our story. It's like you don't become a scratch golfer, just by like showing up and it happens in a year. You gotta let it mature. You gotta let the process play out. And bourbon is a lot like that. To do something really quality takes time, and it takes dedication, and it takes a team of people who are willing to learn and grow and push back and educate themselves and have a good time in the process. Yeah, I mean, in the sense that there's process, right? So in music, you have the songwriting process, then you have to go into the studio, and then you have to go tour the record. And so all of these things are sort of different parts of the process. And it's very similar to bourbon. You've got to get the right ingredients. You've got to cook those ingredients. Then you go in the distillery, if you will. It's kind of like the studio where you put them all together and you wait. And same thing with music. There's this process of mixing, and then you got to come up with a story, a strategy of how you're gonna, the business part of it. How are we gonna turn the story that we have into something that is on a shelf that people go, I want to try that. Similar to music. How do you tell the story of the song that you wrote and the song that you recorded and get it out to where you have people that want to listen to it and put it on their playlist? So there's a lot of parallels between bourbon making and music making. Yeah, I would say anybody that is trying to get in the bourbon whiskey world, don't cut corners. Do it because you love it. And it's a really friendly space. Everybody's pulling for each other. I mean, obviously it's competitive, very competitive, but it's a bit of a family. And I've been impressed by how people who are really successful in the bourbon industry are generally willing to sort of take people under their wing. So if somebody has a real desire to get involved in the industry, there's definitely avenues to do so if you're willing to sort of grind it out and hustle. Well, we have a very fun thing happening on the golf course where we're building a bunch of cabins, and we're going to build an actual distillery restaurant experience for people. It's going to take some time, but that's a part of the plan, is to have a physical space where people can come and experience our bourbons at the golf course. Stay at the golf course, drink at the golf course, spend the night at the golf course, do it all over again. I hope that they are looking around at the people that they're with and experiencing a lot of gratitude. Life is short. Friends are hard to make. They're hard to keep. I think a good glass of bourbon is sort of where a story begins. And the story of Sweeten's Cove is such a unique story of somebody with a dream and a group of people who believed in that dream. And now it's become one of the sort of most famous. It's become one of the most famous pilgrimage golf experiences in the world. And we want to take that same spirit to our bourbon and invite people into what we think is a really great story about friendship.